Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Keely, and I am the owner of lovehopeadventure.com. And if you are watching this replay on YouTube, it originally aired on Periscope. Thanks so much for coming on, all of my live viewers. I'm going to flip the camera around so I can talk with you guys better. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Welcome for coming on. My name is Keely. And if this is your first time with me, I am the owner of Love, Hope, Adventure, where I blog about the marriage relationship, intimacy in marriage, and how you can go deeper with your spouse. Yesterday, I talked about a pretty tough topic. I talked about the fact, should you stay in an abusive relationship? And that's a hard thing to talk about. It's a hard thing to think about. Because, guys, you probably know someone. It's very likely that you know someone who is in a relationship and the two are being abusive to one another. It's very possible, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. You probably know someone who is abusing someone else in some way or another. That's a hard fact. And you know what's hard about it is that you know a lot of really great people, and you cannot ever fathom them doing something like that. And this is the problem with sin. Sin can stay hidden for a while, but it does eventually come to light. And it's hard to accept when you think that this person is so great about something. I had a very good friend. This was many years ago, but a very good friend was accused of sexually abusing some of my other very good friends. And it was a huge shock. Shock to me, shock to others that knew this individual. And it was so hard. It was so hard. And see, I'm going to tell you something. You want to know how a lot of people handle that situation? Well, see, a lot of people sided with the abuser over the victims. A lot of people said the victims were just trying to get back at this abuser. My friend who did the abuse, I was really in a difficult place because, see, my friend who did the abuse abused my other friends, and I really trusted them both. And this was hard, and eventually the friend who was doing the abusing, he admitted to the abuse, and people didn't know how to handle it. They really didn't know how to handle it. And I think that so often in abusive situations, whether it's physical or sexual or mental or whatever, when someone confides in us, or if you even suspect it, you don't know how to handle it. So if you have a friend who is being abused in some way or another, here are some things that you can do to help them. First of all, you need to believe them. If someone comes to you and says, this person is doing these things to me, believe them. Even if you can't really believe them, even if you're like, oh my gosh, I really can't believe that person you're talking about could actually be capable of doing those things. You need to believe your friend. Now listen, your friend might be lying. It is possible, all right? There are people who lie about this kind of thing, all right? But you need to believe them because that is the reality in which they are living. This is what they have decided is their reality. You've got to believe them. And you have to do your following steps based off of their word, even if you're not sure you trust them, even if you're not sure you believe them. You should not play around with abuse because you have no earthly clue what's actually happening. You just don't. You don't know what's going down between that person and someone else. Start by believing them. Take them at their word. All right? Just push it aside if you're like, well, they could be making this up. They could, but don't treat it like that. Do you know how many abuse victims get up the courage to go to someone and say, I'm being abused? And then people are like, no, you're not. I don't believe you. You're making that up. I can't believe that person would do that. Quit it. If someone comes to you, tells you they're being abused, treat them as a victim and move forward from there. The second thing that you've got to do is you have to understand that while it seems really easy to you, the clear plan of action of how that victim can get out of the situation, it's not clear to them, and it's not easy. Someone says, yes, I was just thinking that. It is so hard to come forward. It is very hard to come forward if someone is hurting you and be vocal about it, because most abusers will isolate their victims and tell their victims that they can't tell anyone about the abuse because of whatever reason. All right. So I had a friend who was being abused. She was mentally and verbally abused for a number of years. And before her spouse physically abused her. But that spouse would tell her, people are going to look at me bad. This is going to ruin my friendships. If you tell other people about these situations, about what's going on, it is going to ruin my reputation. I'm going to lose these friendships. It's all going to be your fault. Okay, I've heard that person say that to that friend of mine. Abusers are going to do whatever they can to intimidate the victim. So if someone has chosen to come to you, guys, just believe them. Just believe them, because they've taken a really big step here. And what they don't need to be confronted with is someone who says, well, I just can't imagine your spouse doing that. Don't. Whether this is somebody who's in a spousal situation, or if this is a child with a parent, or whatever the living arrangements. So the second thing you have to recognize, though, is that this is not an easy situation. And it is not easy to get out of an abusive relationship, because there is this situation that happens, this attachment that happens between abuser and victim. It's this sort of codependent situation. So the victim starts to believe that they cannot get away from the abuser because the abuser has told them that they are worthless, they don't have any value, they can't function on their own, they can't survive on their own. And so the victim's self-esteem is already very low. They don't believe they can leave. If they believe they could leave, if they believe that they deserved better than what they're getting, they'd leave. They would get out of that situation. But psychologically, they don't believe it. They don't believe that they need to leave. There's a lot of reasons. Okay, so some victims think that they are controlling the situation. Some victims have made themselves feel like they're controlling it. It's within their control. So as long as I don't say this, do that, or whatever, that abuser is not going to abuse me anymore. So some victims will stay in the situation because they feel that they have control over it. In reality, they don't. Some victims stay in the situation because they feel like they actually deserve it. Well, I actually deserved that abuse because I did this or did that, whatever. There is so much going on psychologically for them. And while you, on the outside, if you are not an abuse survivor, if you are not someone who has ever been in that, it can be so easy for you to go, well, if they were really being abused, they would leave. Actually, that's very untrue. The abuse is this cyclical thing that just keeps them there. A lot of victims don't leave their abuser, and if they do get away from them, the abuser keeps coming to them and convinces them to come back. And as someone who's watching that happen, it can be so hard. It can be so hard to see them go through that cycle, to see them continuing to put themselves through that. And then we can start thinking, well, they really are to blame, because if that victim would just get away and stay away, they wouldn't get abused. There's so much going on psychologically, and while it is hard to have patience through something like this, I encourage you to have patience. The third thing you need to understand is it's not your choice. You don't get to choose to remove the victim from the situation that's a grown person. Children are different. Call social services, guys. Don't you wait. Call them right away. Let authorities make that decision. But when it comes to grown-ups, that decision is not yours. And so there are a lot of times because the victim does love the abuser, and there is this attachment situation, you might try to get involved and get the victim out of that situation, and then they just turn on you. And that is going to really be bad for you, as a person. That's going to make you feel really bad. Like, what in the world? I was trying to help you, and now you are looking at me as though I'm the one who did something wrong here. Because, see, that victim is trying everything they can to appease the abuser. You getting involved and you putting your business into it too hard, what's really going to happen is you're going to isolate that victim even more. Because now the abuser is going to be aware of your involvement and probably take it out on the victim. That does happen. So you've got to step lightly. You've got to be that support, all right? But you cannot force that victim to leave the situation. You can encourage them, and you can tell them, hey, I'm here for you. If you want to leave that situation, I will help you get out. Right? So I've tried to help friends leave those types of situations before. It's got to be on their terms, though. They have to make that decision, I am done with this. Your role as a friend is to be there to support, listen to them. I know it's hard to listen to them. You can say, you deserve better than this. That wasn't right. That's not okay for that person to do that. But you can't force them to leave. And here's one of the problems that victims often have. They do not believe they have a choice, all right? Because the abuser is controlling them. The abuser is saying, you don't have a choice in this matter. I'm going to do to you what I feel I need to do to you. So they don't have any choices. They feel controlled. What they don't need is a controlling friend who is trying to force them to do something else. You've got to be that person for them that allows them to make their own decisions. And it's hard. But you have to let them. And again, guys, I'm talking about adults here. I am not talking about children. That is a social service situation. Call them right away. But when it comes to grown people, you have to let them make their own decision. It's like demanding that somebody lose weight. Well, how in the world can you possibly regulate that? Someone has to decide that they want to lose weight. They make their own decisions to lose weight. They're going to eat right. You can't demand that the victim leave the abuser, but you can be there to support him. You can be there and say, come to my house. If you need a place to get away, come live with me. If you need a job, I will help you find a job. If you need somewhere safe for your children, or yourself, I will find that for you. I will go with you to court. If you want to prosecute your abuser, I'll be there. Tell me the court dates. Take out that restraining order. I will go there with you. I will be there with you. I will hold your hand through all of it. You aren't doing this alone. You've got to be support for them, but you cannot force them to make the decision. When you start getting angry with them because they're not leaving that abuse, it doesn't help them either. I know it's so hard. If you are feeling angry or feeling frustrated that that victim will not leave the abuser, try really hard not to show that to them. Because see, what the victim doesn't need is for them to think that you are angry with them. All of your anger has to be directed more toward the abuser. Like, that is wrong for that person to do that to you, not you are wrong for staying with them. All right, because see, it's a psychological thing, guys. I know it's hard to understand, but if you've never been in it or you've never walked with anybody who's been through it, it can be so easy to just pass judgment. Well, they just need to leave. If it was that easy, people wouldn't stay in that type of situation. And you don't know what cultural things that person is dealing with. You don't know what things they are dealing with from what they grew up with. And you have no clue what's going on in the relationship. So if you have a friend who is being abused, don't ignore it. All right? Don't ignore the abuse. Ask them about it. How is it going? How are things going? Don't pry too much so that they think every time you get together you just want to know about their latest abuse situation. Don't ignore it, though. Don't say, we're just going to pretend like you're not actually getting abused. Be support for them. Get them the help if they want to have the help. If they reach out to you, get them the help. Keep that lines of communication open to them as much as you can. Just be there for them so that when they do want to trust someone, they trust you. Don't break their confidences. You can't go sharing it all over the world to everybody out there because, again, psychologically, the abuser is telling that victim, don't. So it's their story. They've got to share it. Children, again, very different. You need to call social services. Get them out of that situation. But with adults, there's really nothing the law can do about it. The adult gets to go back. They get to make that own decision. And so, guys, that's kind of what I want to encourage you today. Pray for your friends. Pray for them. Ask for God's intervention on this. Be there for them. Support them. Okay? But don't try to force them to make a decision. That's probably one of the hardest things you're going to have to deal with. And try everything you can to not get angry at them. Because remember, guys, they are the one that is the victim here. Even if it seems like they have chosen to allow themselves to stay the victim. So, guys, I know this is sort of a heavy scope, and it has to get talked about. We don't want to think about abuse. We don't want to think about people getting hurt. We don't want to think about our friends getting into these types of fights and these types of situations and people we love hurting one another. But we've got to. Abuse cannot stay under wraps. You can't stay quiet about it. All right? We need to shine light on abuse where it's happening. We have to be aware of it. So that's my thoughts for you today. Tomorrow, we'll have a much lighter scope. Austin and I, we're going to go out on a date, and we're going to scope while we're out so you can see what we're doing and maybe get some date ideas, and we will talk with you tomorrow. If you want to find out what else I've been blogging about, go to lovehoopadventure.com, and I will check you guys later.